Welcome back to Real Estate Ramblings. I'm Amy Shrader with Remax Real Estate 10, and I'm joined today by
Michelle Hodges.
Christina Stump.
Unfortunately, Ashley couldn't be here, but she's at a closing, so that's always a good thing. So, how have y'all been doing? How's the year treating you so far?
It's going pretty good. Got some buyers. The biggest thing that I've seen, everybody's becoming a little bit more reserved right now. Spending a lot of time on the road, but as far as just writing those contracts, it's a hit or miss right now for me. It really is. And I understand their side too, because with the way that the world is, groceries, gas prices, and everything else, they're having a really hard time justifying those house payments. So, again, a lot of time and just hoping things change really soon.
I think the lack of inventory is probably a big part of that.
Yes, huge.
You know, they don't have enough houses to look at, and so they're coming in and they're looking at two or three, and that's
Nothing's
not the
hitting the
one.
spot, yeah.
No. Or then we'll even seek like surrounding counties to see, but then they're like, if it's not the most perfect home, checks every box, they're not going to live 30 to 40 minutes out.
Agreed.
So that's also made it even more difficult. But hopefully good things will happen, and there's always next, spring. I know it usually opens up a little bit more, so still trying to stay positive.
All right. What about you?
Pretty much the same, just doing a lot of running, staying on the road. I'll be honest with you, I think I have more people looking at land right now than I do houses, simply because...
There's nothing to buy.
Right, absolutely. So, I mean, I've shown quite a bit of land recently. Do have a couple of great listings coming up as far as that's concerned, but as far as the, actual, I'm experiencing the same thing Christina is, where you go, and then, folks are just like, it's just not there. So, you just try to be patient and get through it. And I'm the same way. I totally understand where folks are right now. Interest rates and everything else, and like you said, not just the housing market, but everything's inflated right now. So it's pulling at people's purse strings.
I've actually have written 3 contracts. Like I've got it pretty much done. Well, actually, I did get it done because I sent them, and in the process of them just sitting down to read it, they were like, "We just can't do this."
Yeah.
And that can be discouraging to a degree because you get excited for them, you see the excitement in them, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, we're not going to
Cut
sign.
it off. Yeah.
So that's happened a few times here lately, but I get it. It's a huge commitment, financially and everything. So.
Well, and we've talked about this before, with it being an election year, people always tend to be, I think, more cautious in making those large financial decisions because they don't know what's going to happen come November yet, and the fear.
Right.
I've heard that a lot here lately too.
Oh, yeah.
People will mention that
the closer
so
it gets,
much.
the more you're going to hear it. And so I really think that the rest of our real estate sales are going to be focused between now and like the end of September, because I think October 1st, when those political ads start rolling, and that's all you see, you're going to see a lot of people like, I'm just going to wait.
And to see what goes on.
Now, the interesting thing would be to see if the Fed actually lowers those rates September or October, and mortgage rates go down as a result. How's that going to play out? You know what I'm saying? So it could be interesting. But
yeah, if they drop the bottom out of those interest rates, or if
they're
not the bottom, but if they just pull
them
down, I think you will see a few buyers that will go,
well, they would be
and
able
jump in
to.
better.
That $200 or $300 literally is making a
Well,
break.
and I mean, you're talking about if the Fed cuts the interest rate, the Fed fund rate by a quarter point. I mean, the impact that's going to have on the mortgage rates is not going to be a full percent or anything like that. I mean, there's no guarantee that the Fed lowering the Fed funds rate will lower mortgage rates.
Right.
But right now, I think the bond market is going to see that as a sign. Okay, buyer activity will pick up. They'll start buying those T-bonds again, which will lower the mortgage rate. Because mortgage rates are tied to the purchase and sale of 10-year Treasury bonds. The government subsidized that purchasing of bonds for years, which is why we had 2.5%, 3.5% interest rates. When they quit buying those T-bonds and subsidizing that purchase is when the mortgage rates shot up. So, it's a complicated process.
Amen.
Yes. Hoping they come down is all I
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think we're ever going to see below 4 again in our lifetime unless something drastic happened. But, even dropping from the mid 6s down to below 6
Mhm.
Makes
will
a
have a
big-
huge impact.
It will.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It will really help a lot that are just right there at being able to buy. That will really give them the opportunity to buy.
I think buyers at this point are just all in all a little taken aback by what's taken place in the market. You've got the changes that have come down, from the JOD and from NAR and
DOJ.
sorry. Can we cut that out? DOJ and from NAR. So between those and, the fact that the interest rates are high, the inventory's low, I mean, you can kind of see where folks are. I mean, there's just a lot of uncertainty, but I think, like you said, just be patient, and then, in a year, things will start to normalize or so again, is our hope, and, it'll be there.
We hope.
I was just, yes.
We hope. Yes, we hope.
Because, I mean, obviously, there's nothing that brings me greater pleasure than finding families' homes.
Yes.
And then when you are on the road and you're seeing them, you can see the discouragement in the wife or the husband, or the kids are getting excited. They're going into a home. They're picking out their bedroom.
Oh,
And
kids
it's-
going to do that. You can look at 10 houses, and
They
those kids
do.
are going to get excited about every
Yeah.
house
Yes.
because it's new and it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, but now kids are the most honest, because if they see a house, I don't like this house, we ain't moving here. And you know what? Mom and Daddy going to check that one off the list real quick.
But I love that part. Like, I really genuinely do. Seeing the
Same.
excitement, there's something that it just, down in my soul, that's just like, wow, I'm exactly where I need to be at the right moment. And it just makes me so happy. And then, of course, when you get to hand them the key, that just,
Right.
tops it off. So,
And I do think, like I said, nobody wants to be the guinea pig. So once these changes go into effect and those are into place too, and everybody's kind of settled back down and worked their way through all of that, I think people will become more comfortable as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked about these changes a lot, but I don't really know. The settlement isn't finalized until like November.
Right.
But we have to start making all these changes. In
Absolutely.
August.
you got to be prepared.
And so what if it doesn't get approved?
Right.
See,
And
I
then
You
it
know what I'm
changes
saying?
again. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Nobody
I've
wants to be
thought
the
about
guinea
that.
pig.
I'm like, all this huge deal going on. What if nothing even changes?
Well, I think something's going to change,
Absolutely.
but I think from the trickle of information that we get, I mean, I've heard that the DOJ's not real happy with what's being agreed to. So I see, what happens if the DOJ says we don't want buyer's agents to get compensated by the seller at all? Now, I don't understand how, if we're in a capitalism country,
Mhm.
how they can basically restrict the free trade, if you will, by doing that.
Yeah, me neither.
But I would have never thought that we would even be in this position to begin with. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Well, what about what prevents that listing agent from sharing her commission? They can't control what you do with that.
Well, they can try. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I think to make the DOJ truly happy, they want to do away with buyer agent commission altogether. And the only way the buyer agent gets paid is by the buyer, which you and I both know is not going to work.
That was about to
Absolutely
be the
not.
next words out
It's
of my mouth.
absolutely
It's
not going to work. Again, you're eating their legs off with interest rates. The inventory's low. I mean, how are they supposed to come up with the money as well? I just feel like that. Yeah, buyers are really being shifted to the back burner right now, and I think it's harmful
Well, I agree.
to the public.
And I think, everybody, we've always heard home ownership. That's the dream of America, is home
Absolutely.
ownership. And I think it's getting ready to get like chopped away
Yes, because of all.
the only people that are going to be able to buy homes are going to be the rich.
Yep.
And the investors.
Yep.
And the corporations that are purchasing into the housing market.
Mhm.
Like there's a company that bought a huge block of homes in Atlanta right now that they're going to make rentals.
It's just not. It's really
it's
sad
painful.
because
It's
people
painful.
work so hard. This year I had some of the youngest clients I've ever worked with. They were barely over 20 years old. Take those clients, they're just anybody. Who knows? They may have tons of money at that age. But more than likely, you just knock them out of being able to purchase that home because it's just not there.
Oh, yeah.
It would have never closed.
Yeah.
So it just really hurts my soul so bad because they wanted to buy a home so much. They have worked so hard since they've been 14, whatever the age is, and all this is going to mess that up.
Well, what do you think? I mean, like when kids hit a certain age, and I'm not just talking about kids, but any new home buyers and things of that nature,
Yeah.
if the DOJ would look back and look at the reality of what these folks in this, economic class can do financially, what is their answer for it?
But that's the problem, is the people in the DOJ are up here.
Understood.
And just like any politician, they forget where
Understood.
they've come from.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's my point. Somebody needs to take a step back and really look at what's happening with that economic class and what they are and aren't going to be able to do realistically. Come up with some solutions. Tell us how we can help them. I mean, because we want to.
Well, I think the only way that it would work, if that were to happen, is like lenders are going to have to allow that to be added on, which is not doing your buyer a favor.
No.
Because that's going to up their monthly payment.
Yeah,
and so now you get to have that conversation of, well, guess what? Your payment's going to be $60 a month higher now because you've got to pay me.
Well, I feel like it's going to backfire on us, and we're going to look like the bad ones. Well, I couldn't buy a house because I had to pay you, which we are providing a service. Just like if you go out here and get your oil changed, it's a service. You deserve to be paid for it. But, like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I feel like a lot of people are going to look at it, well, it's your fault. I couldn't buy a house. And it just, I hope that doesn't happen, but I keep seeing that in my head.
I just think, I don't think that they'll blame us for that. I think it'll be more of what we've talked about in the past where, unfortunately, they're going to be unrepresented, and they're going to be dealing with, seller's agents quite often who are, again, already committed to the seller. And then the real question is, who's looking out for the buyer at the end of the day? Who's looking out for the buyer?
Well, then that's going to result in another big lawsuit.
Absolutely.
It's just going to keep going.
Which is why we have buyer's agents today. We didn't have a lawsuit previously, but like buyers were like,
hey, yeah,
we need
nobody's
somebody.
representing us. We're just kind of getting screwed over here. But I don't know. I think some people will take that viewpoint, especially those on the lower scale of,
oh, absolutely.
I couldn't buy a house, because I had to pay you or whatever. And then I think they will get to the point they're coming to the listing agents to try and buy. I don't know how all that's supposed to work out. But I think it's more important than ever as a buyer's agent that you prove your value to people. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, we get the bad rep and rap of being a door opener.
Absolutely.
We're a chauffeur. We're the tour guide. We're taking people out. We're letting them look at the house. I mean, what else do we really do? And when you stop and you explain to somebody, hey, yeah, we're lining up these showings for you, but we're also looking at the houses, talking, looking at what you've told us you want.
Right.
To make sure that's going to align with what you want. And trying to help you weed out these houses that don't meet up with your expectations. We're negotiating on your behalf. We are working for you to help you get that house at the lowest dollar that we possibly can.
And then we have some folks who will say, well, I can negotiate on my own. Sure you can. But if it's you and you're negotiating with a listing agent, you're negotiating usually with somebody who's studied the market, who knows what that pricing is, who knows where they're at on these things. And then the real question is, how much time have they really spent, really understanding the housing market and the pricing and all of those things, and to even know what price point they should be negotiating at. Do you understand what I'm saying on that? So
yeah,
I don't really think a lot of people understand like what a buyer's agent is. The hours of paperwork, lining up inspections, appraisals, being your voice, being everything. Like you said, it goes way beyond just opening a door.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
stress, that everything that goes along with it to closing.
Right.
There's so much to it.
I saw a little video on Instagram over the weekend that was kind of hilarious to me, but it was the point of view if a realtor charged the way an attorney does. Okay. And so the lady's like, hey, congratulations, we're getting ready to go to your closing. So we just need to take care of this bill here. And so it's like, coordinating showings,
I would
how
have
many
loved to have
hours.
seen it.
And then, the mileage for all the time she was out there. And then, the time spent emailing the client, time spent emailing the lender, the mortgage company, time on the phone coordinating inspections and appraisals and, all the things.
Uh-huh.
And so, at the bottom line, it was like $27,000 something. And she's like, are you going to pay check or, how do you going to cover that? And the lady's like, what? And I thought it was hilarious. But
It is.
people don't take that into account.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Last year I had to hire an attorney to deal with something. And, that attorney talked to me. He really tried to talk me out of doing what I wanted to do. I said, it's the principle of the matter for me. Like, I'm going to move forward with this. And he was like, okay, I'm going to need $7,500 right out the gate. That is our retainer fee.
Yep.
A retainer fee.
It's your choice at that point.
And so, he's like, that will cover getting us started and doing this and doing that. And then, we'll just see what happens after that. If we have to go to court and get an injunction. And I'm like, okay. So, it actually got resolved, I think, within 24 to 36 hours after
He
that
sent the
initial
initial
phone
letter.
call. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get part of this money back. Oh, no. I got $500 back out of a $7,500 retainer.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had to read over, the documents and the documentation I had sent to support my case.
Right.
They had to look up Tennessee real estate law. They had to talk to the other attorney. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just went on and on and
the
on.
things adds
Right.
up, his time that he had spent on that.
Right. And
Yeah.
his time ain't cheap. And our
Right.
time's not cheap.
Well,
I mean,
Right.
I don't think people realize we don't make $1 until we go to closing.
exactly.
Like, none. All those times we went to 8 counties or wherever we went, and I'm not complaining by no means because I love it. I love being on the road with clients. It's so much fun. But I really don't think people understand that.
That it's your expense. That it's your expense.
100%. And that's okay, but until you walk out that closing door,
Yeah.
nothing.
You get
I know,
Yeah.
like back in 2020, I guess it was the first year that I was like the #1 agent at Remax for that year. And of course, my mom is proud and she's going to church and she's
Yes.
bragging to everybody, all her friends about it. And one of the ladies said, well, Remax needs to give her a raise. And my mama just, okay, like my mom understands, but the average Joe
They
out
don't.
there does not understand that we don't make a salary,
Mm-mm.
even though we may put in 70 hours.
Absolutely.
If we don't have a closing that week, we've not made a bit of money.
Or you'll have people say, well, why do you go to the office if you don't? Like, if you don't get paid hourly, or why do you have an office? Why do you have this? Well, I've got to go somewhere to work. Or,
Right.
I mean, I'm still not getting paid to be there.
Right.
But, I choose to be there.
Right.
So,
Because you learn
exactly.
when you're here. But yeah, people are hilarious.
The perception of realtors.
The
kills
people
me.
who do understand it are always so much more appreciative of the
For
things
everything
that you
that you
do.
What you do.
Like, they're the ones that when you stop to have lunch, we've got your lunch.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm
Always.
saying?
Yes.
Mhm.
Or they'll send you a gift card.
Mhm.
If they didn't buy anything, I've had people who have sent me gift cards in the mail
Yes.
and was like, we hate that we wasted your gas that day.
I've
Mhm.
had
Da
to
da
do
da
that
da
too.
da.
Yeah.
Here you go. And it just makes you feel good to
It
know
does.
they get it.
Right.
Because,
Right.
honestly, it's your goal when you're out. Like, I want to cover that. I want to take them to lunch, do stuff. But you will have your few
That
handful.
are absolutely
They're like, I
adamant.
wished you would. You better put that card up. And it's such a, it just makes you feel happy,
Absolutely,
you know,
it
because
does.
I'm like, wow, we've worked all day, you know, something so much as a bottle of water, you appreciate it.
Just like you said, just the fact that they get it. Even if
Yeah.
you refuse or you end up, not taking that or what have you,
Mhm.
they get it, and that matters.
Yeah.
It does.
And it's usually people who have bought and sold homes in the past.
Yeah.
It's people who understand the value that a buyer's agent provides to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to compensate you because they feel like they've wasted your time at that point. You know what I mean?
I had a client, we had spent several days, showing, doing whatever, and I think we were all exhausted. She actually sent me a gift card for a massage. And I thought it was the funniest. She's like, well, now that I drug y'all around East Tennessee, she's like, now go enjoy, because they ended up not doing anything, which is fine. But something about that massage, I just thought, wow, well, how.
It was thoughtful.
Yes, because,
Yeah.
they're not cheap either. And the fact that she did that, it just. So
well, and I've had clients who are like, I'm sorry we ended up not buying. We've drug y'all over hell and high water for 2 days. Let me write you a check for your time. Yeah. And you have to explain, we can't accept a check.
Right.
And they're always like, well, nobody has to know.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know. And I know that I'm not supposed to do that. So
right.
I appreciate the crap out of you for thinking about me.
Absolutely.
But I can't do that.
Can't do that. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Can't do that. But it is, again, it's you can appreciate it very much. Like if you stop and they're like, here, at least let me put some gas back in your vehicle. And they're just like, no,
those
it's
little
part
things
of my job.
I don't care to do, but something like that, like the check.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But little tiny things, and then that massage, I thought, well, that is quite a bit of money, but it was a gift card, and I thought, well, heck, she's not lying. We have spent a lot of time in the car, but
yeah. So why do you think, personally, that it's so important that a buyer has their own agent?
For inspection purposes, paperwork purposes, to look over, to go over with them. I mean, just for someone to have your back and to stand up for you, to not just be out here unrepresented. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's so critical to have your own person. The seller has theirs. So you need someone on your side to be like, to stand up for you. And then when you're seeing those go over, which of course I'm no home inspector or anything like that, but go over that report with them. If not, they're getting something in their email that's dang 70 pages long, and they have no idea what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that just for a million reasons, be someone to be your voice, I guess.
A lot of the same again. Just the having those trained real estate eyes, folks who understand the market, who already know where they're coming in, who know what these folks are looking for, who know the area. And know, like, I had a client the other day when I was showing a house who sent me that same house while I was right in the middle of showing it. And I immediately said, no, this is, close to the Russellville area, which I knew was not for this client, and needs a few things done to it that I knew also wouldn't work for that client. So I was just like, but, just knowing your people and knowing what they're looking for, cutting down on the time that they're spending. And again, having somebody who's got a trained eye with the real estate market is important. And then coming in after that, once they've found that perfect home and I fight for my clients. I understand that I owe them my loyalty, and I give that to them. So to me, from the inspection all the way through, it's my job to make sure they understand their processes and make sure that they understand, what's on the line. So I really think it's important that somebody has their back.
Well, just like if you're writing special stipulations, protecting their earnest money, you've got someone out here that's just writing whatever or don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
They've lost money because of that reason.
Well, and not only that, or if you have a buyer's agent who's already working, a seller's agent who's already working for the seller, and that's where their loyalty belongs, and then this buyer's over here, and probably something could be helpful, but it's wrong of the seller's agent to, push them in that direction because they've not paid them for their loyalty and they already have it somewhere else. So they need somebody that can go, you should ask for this or you should ask for that. I mean, as a seller's agent, you'd be wrong to do that. So
I mean, I've used the analogy before. If you're getting a divorce, you're not going to use the same divorce attorney that your spouse is using because you already know that the attorney can only represent one party fairly.
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing with a realtor. Like, you can have the best intentions and think, well, I'm going to be fair to both parties. You can't be fair to both parties.
Yes, it's impossible.
Because the seller's objective is to sell at the highest dollar and to get the best deal for themselves. The buyer's objective is to buy it at the lowest price they can and get the best deal for them. And there's no way you can represent
Both
or be
sides.
fair to either side of that.
I
No
think
way.
it's going to get you in a really big pickle when you're going over that inspection report.
Mm-hmm.
You know, them wanting repairs. Well, of course,
Absolutely.
you're going to do everything you can to try to not to
Absolutely.
make that happen. So I will not represent both sides.
Right. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. If you're the seller's agent and the buyer's asking for all these things, you're not going to jump ship. You know, if you click unrepresented on that thing, and you're not going to jump ship and say, oh, well, you should ask for these things, or, oh, this, you know, none of that.
You're playing both sides, and you can't do that.
Yeah, because you're going to piss your seller off.
Oh, fast.
Absolutely.
So I just think I've told myself a long time ago, it's just not something that I'm willing to do. I will call another agent. I will call someone, hey, I have a client that's interested, you know, write this offer for him, do whatever. So then it's agent to agent versus me against, you know, both
Somebody with-
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
Don't want to do that at all.
And I think that's why it's important for us. Like, we have, like, our circle. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so we know that, like, if you go out and you do show your listing, because it's your listing, your job's to help the seller get the home sold.
Right.
And that buyer says, it's everything I want, let's write the offer. You're like, hold tight. I
Yeah,
got a
I've
girl
got
at the
you.
office.
Yes.
That's what
She
I
will
always
represent
say.
you.
Yeah.
Da 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 da.
Right.
And that's how I explain it to my sellers. I'm like, you know, my job is to get your home sold. So I will show it to anybody that's
Mhm.
qualified that calls me that wants to go see it. But when they say offer, I'm like, hold up.
I'm out.
I got
Refer
somebody
it
else,
to someone else.
you know, that's going to take care of that for you.
And I think that's just really the best way to handle it because there's enough money for everybody.
Right.
And it's going to just make everything go a lot smoother. You're got a better chance to get to closing, I feel like, giving that to someone else
Right.
versus keeping it in, you know, to yourself.
And I have so many sellers who are like, well, I want you to make both sides of that commission.
I've had
I
them
have
tell me
it
that
too.
too.
I have it too.
No, you know, and I explain it to them. I just break it
Me
down.
too.
I'm like, I
This
can't
is
represent
why.
that buyer and represent you. You looked me up. You called me. You interviewed
seeked me
you
for a
hired
reason.
me.
Right.
So I've got to represent you. Like, you have my loyalty,
Right.
and that buyer needs somebody looking out for them.
Right. And I think
I don't like lawsuits.
Maybe that's what I told her seller
Yeah.
one time because that's what she said. She's like, "Oh, that's what we want," and I'm like, "No, honey, it gets gray too quick, and I don't want no lawsuits." And they
Yeah.
just started laughing. And then once I kind of explained to them, they're like, "Well, that makes so much sense."
Yeah.
And
They
most of them,
understood.
if they have sold a home previously,
know.
they are just like, I've never had an agent tell me that
Absolutely.
before. You know, they're
Yeah.
like, most agents want to try and get it all. And I'm like, I don't want it all.
Me neither.
I don't want the headache. I don't want the stress. I like to sleep at night.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I think it
a
plays,
lot of times your E&O is not going to cover you if you cover
both.
both sides. Especially because of the dollar amount limit,
Right.
you know, on the transaction. So,
I think a lot of it plays with your conscience and what you got to feel good with. Like I overthink everything, analyze everything. And
no,
I have to go
not
Yeah.
you.
Wow.
And I have to go to bed at night with a clear mind and know that I did what was right by every person that day. Because if not,
Absolutely.
I will have to call them back. I will have to go back and do something. Because I'm the kind of person, I will not get no sleep if I think I've done something wrong to somebody. So,
Yep. I had a deal that was, the seller lived in Oregon or Washington State, somewhere out west. And it was like a $1.3 million farm over in Rogersville. And, you know, he and I had a good conversation. He had loads of money. So, you know, he wasn't like pressed to get this farm sold. This is before like COVID and real estate went crazy. But it was one of those listings that because it was such a unique property, I kind of had to be there at every showing. You know what I'm saying? And so these particular buyers knew it was my listing and they had called me and let's go over and, you know, look at it. you don't look at 300 acres in 30 minutes.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean,
No,
If you did,
don't.
you missed a lot of something. You've done
you're going to be
something.
there for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so took them over there. They looked at everything. One of the houses was tenant occupied. So that was kind of if you want a second showing, I can get you into the tenant occupied house. But the first go around, we're just looking at the main house and the land and all that. They liked it. They wanted to come back and look at the tenant house, got that set up. And the guy had a groundskeeper, if you will, somebody that would come in and make sure that the stuff was being done on the farm. So that guy took them around on a ATV or something and showed them the property lines and, up at the tallest part of the ridge and all this stuff. So I probably had 6 or 7 hours of time invested with these people of going over there. So at the end of the second, showing or whatever, they expressed an interest in writing an offer. And she's like, well, we want to make an offer on the place, but I don't know what to offer. And I'm like, well, I'm going to stop you right there because I don't want to hear about your offer. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me like I had two heads. And I said, I represent the seller. You don't want to be talking to me about writing an offer.
Good for you.
And she said, well, who's going to write the offer? I'm like, do you know another realtor around here? Because this was before I had my little crew, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And she said, no, we don't. We're not from here. And I said, okay, well, I got a guy in my office, because Steve was working with me at that time. I said, I got a guy in my office that will be happy to represent you, because I knew he'd be happy about a $1.3 million.
And Steve he's such a great guy anyways. You
He
knew
is.
he would represent them and do a great job and get the job done.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And, I told him, I'm like, look, I've already spent this much time with these people. I've done 2 showings. So I did ask for a little more on a referral fee than I normally
Because you
would.
had
Absolutely.
Because I had
invested.
time invested, but
You did all the legwork. All he had to do was
well, no, that ended up not being the case because he had to coordinate inspections and do this
Absolutely.
and do that. So I mean, he was over
Far
there for
more
a good
to
amount
it,
of
yeah.
time as
Yeah.
well. But I called the seller and because I had told him the feedback we'd gotten from the showings and stuff. So he called me when we got the offer and he was like, "Why didn't you write the offer for him?" And I said, "Because I represent you." And he was like, "But you showed him the property. You spent all that time with them, da 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 da." I can't think of the groundskeeper's name, but he called and told him like how much time they'd been out and yada yada yada. And I'm like, I still represent you. My job's to get the farm sold for you. So I have no problem,
Helping that
spending
show, do
6
whatever
or
it's-
7 hours out there to get somebody on the hook for it. But I said, I can't represent them and represent you.
That's
I said, so
absolutely
I've
right.
got another agent in my office and he's going to represent that buyer in this transaction. And he said, that is the most honest and ethical thing I've ever heard
Yes.
come out of a realtor's mouth. And he paid me a bonus
Just because
at
of that.
closing because I wouldn't double in that deal and gave that buyer their own representation. Now, he could afford to do that. Most people can't, but
still, I
It was
mean, you're
pretty cool.
absolutely right. And I think it's great. You have, I mean, of course, obviously you've taken a bunch of us under your wing and mentored a lot of us. But that's one of the things that I think you've taught several people in this office about the importance of everybody having their own representation and the importance of not trying to double dip on that and repercussions of what can happen. So I think we're all very, very mindful of that. And you've brought that to the table. So
I heard that a lot my first year. And then also, like, nobody's going to give it to you, like, or hand you that paperwork, go digging. Do you know how many
Mhm.
times I've spent in title searcher thinking of her? And I'm like,
yep.
right now I could just.
Yes. Absolutely. But, we all know how to do it. We all know how to research
Yes.
properties. Buddy,
Yes.
I mean, you don't have to worry
And
about that. We
now-
all know how to research properties.
y'all sound like Amy Shrader because you'll come to my office talking about how lazy somebody is, that they couldn't look this up, that they didn't read the agent remarks.
Oh, that
So-
gets me. That's my favorite one because I think one time maybe I went to her to ask something and she's like, "Did you read the remarks?" I guarantee from that day forward I did.
Yeah. Now listen, if I rarely get busted not reading remarks anymore unless
It's
I'm
the
in a
first
position that I
thing I
can't do it.
Mm-mm.
I pull up those remarks. Now, every once in a
know.
while, I'm like, "Hey, do you know right off the hand about this?" And of course,
Yeah.
it wasn't that I was researching the property. It was a question from another realtor, and I just happened to be in a position where I couldn't look it up at that point. So I just shot her a quick message. She's like, "It's in the remarks," and I know she wasn't mad at me.
And I
about
knew
it.
I was.
She
I
wasn't
said
mad at me
that
about
so
it.
that you could go back to that other agent and say,
It's
in the agent remarks.
And I did, but yeah, I knew that you knew it wasn't me. But yeah, we've spent so much time in that anymore. Like I said, if I'm in a position to look, I don't ever call her about anything because we already know. I mean, so we do that legwork and probably much better than most because we know we've done it.
Another thing would be the restrictions, because I think I asked her one or something, and then I learned there's amendments. Or like amending the restrictions.
Right, being careful about
I'm trying to think of what subdivision it was, because I'll never forget. It was like my first year. I had been doing it for a few months, and then she had said that. I think I went down to her office to ask about it, and she's like, "Did you check for that?" And I was like, "Nope."
But I'm going to.
That's where I'm going right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I learned that as far as like giving restrictions to buyers and things like that. Susan Barnett told us in a class, like, you got to be real careful with that because if you're not making sure that what you have is 100% up to date and accurate, you can get in trouble with a buyer because they may buy a piece of land in that subdivision thinking they're going to do this, this, and this.
But then it's changed.
But then it got updated 3 years ago and you didn't share that. I had a lot over in Timberlake, I believe it was. And I had pulled the restrictions.
And all the things.
And I was advertising you could build a house that could be used as VRBO. And I had the president of their HOA call me. And he said, "What's your email address? Because I'm going to send you the amendment that got filed about 2 years ago or something."
Right.
But see, sometimes it's hard to find them sometimes. Like
it is.
That's
But
I do like to make sure that they have the HOA's contact, and I will always recommend and that's one that we've learned together. If you can get a hold of the website or something like that, and I know a lot of times people just want you to answer questions about restrictions. I don't want to do that because again, I think that puts me in a bad position.
Yeah.
I think it's my job to make sure that you have access to those restrictions, that you see those, and that you have that HOA information so that you can be able to call and get any clarification that you need, because they'll ask me, they'll read something in there sometimes and they'll ask me, "Well, does this mean this?" And I'm like, "Listen, that's a matter of opinion. If I were to say that and I'm wrong, you're going to be really mad at me. So I'm going to encourage you to reach out to the HOA president. You talk to them, because it doesn't matter what my opinion is. They're still going to make the call they're going to make." So,
I tell them to reach out to them and also the city or the county. I'm like, I did not create those restrictions. It goes taking it to them.
Yeah.
Well, I've had the same thing happen with TVA. Like, you know, when you're talking dockable properties and what you can do and what you can't do in the way of cutting trees down or clearing paths.
Right.
And I'm like, you just got to talk to TVA
Absolutely.
about that.
I want
And people always want to kind of, well, we could just do that. That's between you and TVA.
That's what I do.
If you got $10,000 to pay a fine, then you do what you want to do. But I'm going to tell you, TVA monitors the shoreline. Because people from out of state have a hard time believing that TVA knows every tree on the shoreline and what's going on here. And I said, you have no idea how much TVA knows. Yeah. And I mean, a few years back, even one of the sellers told me that they deliberately flooded the lake and got it to full pool, like to the 1080 line. Which normally we're never at the 1080 line. You're at 1073,
just so
1075.
they can see.
So they could see who had built structures below the 1080 line that were not permitted. And they went around on their little boats all weekend writing tickets.
Racking up that
But the
money.
thing of it is, you should do what you're supposed to do.
Well,
a lot of times agents don't tell buyers those things.
I
You get
send them
agents
the
that are
website, the phone
unfamiliar
number.
with lake properties, and there ain't no telling what they're being told. That's why you want somebody that specializes in lake properties that knows those rules.
Well, just like with lake property and like the whole septic situation, I'm like, here's TDEC's phone number. Like, I'm not TDEC. I can't speak on behalf of them. I literally will email them everything they need to know. Links, phone numbers, all the things. And I'm not saying a word. Your
Right,
due
it's not
diligence
ours
is
to
what you're
answer.
supposed to do. I will help you get that information, but then I'm immediately out of the game at that point
Right.
because I'm never going to have someone say, well, Christina, you told me I could do this.
Right.
Hear it straight from the county, straight from TDEC, straight from the TVA.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear it from me.
And I've heard the argument, well, if you're not going to tell me this stuff and you're making me
Yes.
go research it, then why do I need you? Because you wouldn't know where to go get the information if I didn't
Absolutely.
tell you.
I organized it. I gave you everything you need.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. You brought up a funny point, not a funny point, but a good point. If you're dealing with a realtor that doesn't understand lake properties, I was standing there one day and I heard another realtor speaking about a client or a customer that they were working with, and they wanted, something that was flat around Cherokee Lake and, yada, yada, yada. And he said, well, that's called a flood zone. And I was like, no, it's not. I mean, I didn't say anything at the moment, but I really felt bad because I felt like that's incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
You're not being fair to your clients, because if they want a flat lakefront property on Cherokee Lake
And they have the money to afford
and they
it.
have the money to
Yes.
afford it,
They can.
there's no reason that they're not out there looking at that, because they're not flood zones. I'm not saying that there are no flood zones around there, but work with an agent who understands how all of that works.
As long as you're above that orange post.
Thank you.
Now on Douglas Lake, it is going to be a bit different because their elevation
Right.
is totally different.
Well, half of their
Absolutely.
land can be
Below
below.
water.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, like, we had a situation where we sold a couple of lake lots at auction. That's when I worked for Greg, and it was in Wild Pear. And so it was lots 1 and 2, which, if you're familiar with Wild Pear, you go all the way down to the end of that road. The boat ramp's on your left, and it was these 2 lots on the right. Flat, level, mostly cleared, and I mean, you're right there on the main channel. Best spots. Yeah, and one of them was like 12 acres, let's say. The other one was like 10 acres. And, we all know with Douglas, you own the land under the water. But the problem was, and I can't think of what elevation it is, that TVA owns below that on Douglas. But the problem was, there was no buildable site above that line. on these two
Oh,
In
wow,
that big
yeah,
of a track?
Yes, because the line was like maybe 60 feet off the road,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of it was below that elevation. And so that's what we have to think, is it's not where
Absolutely.
the water comes up,
Absolutely.
but it's the elevation. And so that was totally disclosed, that in order to build on these lots, you would have to get permission from TVA as to the house site placement and this, that, and the
Right.
other. So, that's something you have to think about, more so on Douglas, I think, than with Cherokee.
Right. Right.
But,
You still, I mean,
you got to look at where that line is, and do you have a buildable site? Because otherwise, you've got to get permitted through TVA to build.
What
those
happened
lots.
with those lots? Did somebody
They
build?
sold. I mean, it was a huge crowd at this auction. It was crazy. They did sell, and then, even though it was fully disclosed, even though it was announced the day of the sale, the guy turned around and sued Greg.
The buyer.
The buyer did. And unfortunately, we don't get to pick our attorney when we're getting sued. We have E&O, they assign our attorney. Okay? So you got to go with what you got. And it drug out for, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years.
Really?
yeah.
Depositions and appeals and doing this and doing that. And at the end of the day, Greg's attorney said, you just need to settle.
Oh my.
And he got so
goodness.
upset, and he was like, but
He
I
just
didn't
closed.
do anything wrong.
Right.
He said, it doesn't matter. If it goes to a court, the probability of you winning is slim to none.
Right. And
So in order to cut your law, because that's what this attorney's thinking of, is he works for the
Mhm.
insurance company, and he's looking at cutting losses.
Yep.
And cutting expenses on the lawsuit.
right. I get it. That used to happen a lot when, of course, in my previous role when I was in HR, and that was one of the things that, of course, we worked a lot with a lot of the attorneys and stuff on employment law and things of that nature. And one of the things that they like to constantly remind us is that your jury is filled with the people beside you at the Dairy Queen. So if you can't if you can't sell that to those people, you can't sell it in court. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how they would tell us to look at things. If I can't sell that to the person inside, beside me in line at this restaurant, then I can't sell it to a
Because
jury.
you're thinking with a logical mind
Yes.
and in a business sense and from a corporate standpoint.
Absolutely.
And the people that are on the jury are your average Joes who may or may not have went to any kind of college.
Yep. I'm just still so amazed that he could be as honest as could be, disclose
You still have to
everything.
take a loss.
Yes.
People can sue for anything.
Mhm.
So you just got to dot your
And
I's, cross your
unfortunately,
T's.
again, that's why I want to protect myself from getting sued,
Uh-huh.
because that attorney assigned to us by our E&O company, they don't work for us in our best interest. They work for the insurance company,
Yikes.
and they're looking out for that insurance company's best interest.
I don't think I knew that, so I'm glad you explained
Well,
that.
me too, because I'm just like taken back by that information
Yeah.
a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you don't
good
get to
know.
pick your attorney. That E&O company has an attorney. They assign them to you, and
Because I
basically-
figured you would go pick your own, you would do all the things. Like, I never realized. Dang, I hate that for girl.
Well, you better hate it for yourself. That's why we don't want to get sued, because we don't have a say
Right.
in any of that. And so if your attorney advises you, you need to cut bait and go, sign a settlement with them. That's what you're going to have to do, because if you don't, then your insurance company's going to drop you anyway, because you did not follow the advice of their attorney. You got to remember
Wow.
who's paying the
All
attorney.
stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Well,
Learn
we
something
do
new
try
every
to dot our
day.
I's and cross our T's.
I
but,
do. I try really
and
hard.
too, like you said, a lot of it is knowing, what you know and what you don't know. When you get over there and having good resources and good tools and knowing where to go get that information, but keeping yourself informed about what's going on with the things that you sell. Like you said, if we're on Douglas, it's a little bit different. If we're on Cherokee, it's, so just understanding the differences. And
Well, I know when I got threatened with my lawsuit on the deal that I had double-ended back years and years ago, which made me change my stance on things, I called an attorney friend of mine in Nashville. We went to high school together. She worked at the title company, but she was an attorney. And I'm just freaking out. I'm talking to her, telling her this whole situation, and I don't want to get sued, and, blah.
Right.
And she said, Amy, this is what I'm going to tell you. If you do any kind of business in real estate, you're going to get sued. You know who doesn't get sued? People that ain't closing but 2 deals a year. They ain't going to get sued. She said, the more you close, the higher your likelihood of getting sued.
Agreed.
So I kind of was like, that makes sense.
It does when you
it
think of
clicked
it
with
like
me.
that.
So I just had to make sure from that point forward, I need to do things as above board as I can to be, ethical and to run my business the way I would want somebody to treat me.
Absolutely.
And that's hard sometimes, because sometimes you just want to pitch somebody's head off.
Yeah. What?
But, but that's how I run my business. I'm going to treat people the way I want to be treated,
Yeah.
as far as my clients and so
Absolutely.
forth.
And we used to live by and I totally agree with you on that, but we used to live by the motto, whatever you say, whatever you could do could end up in court. So, is it, how you going to feel about that when that's presented to your jury? I mean.
And that's, to me, why your paperwork is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
again,
To
it
be
goes
filled out correctly,
To
too.
Susan Barnett and attending classes, because she just drills that into you. You need to treat every transaction like you're
it's
going to have
getting
to
handed.
present that file to a judge.
I think of that one sentence in my head all the time. Could you hand all your papers to an attorney or to a judge right now, and would you feel good about it? And every time I write one, that's how I think about it. If it's
Well,
not right,
even a judge, but to Trek, because if
Oh,
we get
yeah,
a complaint
yeah.
filed against us, it's Trek, that we have to stand before, so to speak, and justify ourselves. So, I took that stuff to heart, and so I try to make sure, okay, yeah, we've got our forms, we're not using language that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had agents get mad at me because I will counter an offer. We're going to accept the price, But
Change the verbiage a little
we're
bit.
going to have to change some of this verbiage because the
Right.
way you've written it, it doesn't make sense. And they have just blowed up because I did that. Why would you counter a perfectly good offer? I'm like, because if I had to take this deal to court, it makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about
Right.
when you fill it out incorrectly.
Right.
And then I've had agents who are like, well, I would hate to think I have to work every deal like I'm going to court.
But you
You know,
should.
But you should.
And I'm like, I just prefer to cover my bases, you know?
Well, I mean, and if you know that and you train yourself in that way, that just becomes a part of your process, not
Not just out here writing contracts willy-nilly and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
you know, and to me, it falls back on reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I write an offer, I want that other agent to know, well, that come from Amy. And Amy's a good agent.
Right.
Mhm.
Amy knows what she's doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think that holds weight with the seller when that agent can go back to
Absolutely.
them and say, you know, well, hey, I know this agent. They're really good to work with. They're going to work hard to make this deal get to closing.
Absolutely.
You know, then if the agent says, well, what do you know about the other, or the seller says, what do you know about that agent? They're new.
Yeah. Right. And you can see it in their work, or either they're not new and they just didn't pay attention to the work. But I agree
Or
with
they
you.
think they're too good to have to go to a
Or-
forms class and learn
Right.
how to fill out the paperwork.
Right. But I have had, I think I've gotten several deals where agents knew who I was, knew who, you know, could see the effort that I put into whatever it is that I do. And I think I've gotten several deals that way. I think you're 100% right. Again, a seller's agent, a good seller's agent knows who they're working with, and they're going to know who's going to help them get it there. And they know what they're looking at when they're looking at the contracts. Even if they don't know your name, they know what they're looking at. So
Yeah, and I think that was even more so true like in 2021 when we had so many multiple offers.
absolutely.
Because, you know, I've had listings where we got 20, 25, 30 offers.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them are going to be real similar. You know what I'm saying? Like price-wise, term-wise.
Right.
So how do you determine
Gotta
what
weed through.
contract you're going to work with? And oftentimes it would boil down to the seller. Well, which of these agents do you think has a better shot of getting this deal to closing?
Right.
Then we'll work with that one. And so that's a lot of weight to put on you as an
Mhm.
agent. Basically, well, you pick the offer. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? But that's why you want to do your very best so that you have that reputation and you
Agreed.
can get your buyers' contracts accepted.
And I do have I got a pretty good win rate, I will say, with those types of deals, those multiple offer deals. And I weigh heavily on the fact that I'm very cautious when I'm writing that offer, and that, you know, I'm, you know, putting everything in correctly. But I know, I'm very aware that once it goes in front of them, mine's not the only one they're going to see. Mine's not the only one.
And that can make or break it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not wrote up just 100% correctly or whatever, that right there, you just knocked yourself out of getting that.
Right.
And winning that. So.
Yep. I agree. All right, ladies, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Hopefully the next time we do this, Ashley will be able to join us. I think we've missed her a couple of
Couple
times now.
times.
so.
She's had a rough couple of weeks, but I'm glad today wasn't due to her health. It was due to a closing. Get it, girl.
That's right. Make that money.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, ladies, and we'll see you again.
Have a
Thank
happy
you.
week. Bye, guys.